Hi, I'm Perry Atkinson, General Manager here at theDove. Hey, check out our other videos and check out our website at thedove.us. Welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson, and delighted to have back with us. It's always a joy to have Dr. Jerome Corsi with us. He's a New York Times best-selling author. He's WorldNetDaily's senior staff reporter, and he really is on top of a lot of things. In fact, he just wrote a new book, and let me encourage you, you're looking for a good Christmas gift, this would be a good one, called No Greater Valor. We want to talk to him about that and also about some issues as well. But first of all, Dr. Corsi, good to see you. How was the root canal?
Oh, I survived. I always do. You know, teeth are, hey, at least I still have them, you know?
Yeah, there you go. Nice to see you again. Merry Christmas to you.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, what made you take this topic on the siege of Bastogne?
Well, the end of World War II has always been, World War II in general was fascinating. My father fought in World War II, and you know, as a kid, I would always ask his friends and him what they did in the war. And the story of Bastogne, you know, which occurred during the Battle of the Bulge, the very end of the war, when Hitler tried this massive Panzer counteroffensive and just about pulled it off. I mean, except for a few units like the 101st Screaming Eagles that went in unprepared, no winter clothing, into this very bitter winter in little tiny village Bastogne in Belgium, Crossroads Village, and held off for 8 days over Christmas. I mean, it's a great story. And what fascinated me so much was the guys who would talk about it, who had been there or, you know, been in the Battle of the Bulge, all had the feeling that Bastogne was a intervention by God, that, you know, the things that happened, that, you know, miracles, that the weather broke and Patton had a prayer said, and the whole nature of it was really one of moral courage in the tradition that stretches back to George Washington praying in the snow at Valley Forge and coming out with a victory that would be completely unanticipated. Well, so too, you know, the 101st going into Bastogne, even when they were sent into Bastogne, you know, nighttime, open trucks, trucked 107 miles in back roads, Belgium, where they didn't even know where they were. Eisenhower and Bradley, the two generals in, you know, the Supreme Allied Command, thought the 101st was expendable. The entire unit got wiped out. As long as they held the Germans for 48 hours, Eisenhower and Bradley would have considered it to be a good deal.
Wow.
And yet they held for 8 days, and they held under remarkable adversity, running out of shells in the foxholes, getting gangrene because they didn't have proper foot coverage. I mean, it's a tremendous story of faith and courage, and the 101st is today off in Liberia fighting Ebola. I went to Fort Campbell, where they're headquartered in Kentucky, and worked in the archives. It's one of the most distinguished military units in U.S. history, military history. And it's a proud unit. It has every reason to be, and I wanted to tell the story.
Wow. How did you find the information?
Well, you know, that's what, I'm a researcher by nature. Remember, I'm an academic. I'm a PhD. I got a PhD at Harvard at 25. I used to be pretty good at this even as a kid. So, you know, it's a library. I was never any good at baseball, but I could go into a library and read every book in a couple days. So the archives are not easy to use in a college park. You've got to resolve to spend a lot of time there figuring out where things are and how they're stored. And the truth is, the archivists don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe an archivist who worked there 20 years ago knows, but they're gone. So you just got to sit there and say, give me these boxes, and, you know, wait for the boxes to come out. It's a long process. And then you got to say, is this what you're looking for or not? For instance, I knew that S.L.A. Marshall, one of the military historians, was at Bastogne, and he took oral histories right after the battle. But nobody knew where they were. And I called military archives. I called West Point. I worked with the archivists at College Park. Nobody knew where they were. They were lost. Well, so here I am one day in the middle of doing this research, and I'm opening a box and looking at it and reading it, and here they are. So this is it. This is the after battle oral history with General McCall, who was the commander, at Bastogne, the artillery commander of the 101st, and assigned by a SLA marshal. Well, I found about 25 or 30 of these, and they were invaluable. I have them up now. NoGreaterValue.com is premiums. People can get them free if they buy the book. But they were lost.
Wow, that is fascinating. I don't. It must emotionally impact you when you start reading this stuff. How do you keep your composure when you realize not only the valor, but the faith and the divine intervention?
It is a very emotional experience. It's even emotional for me to be interviewed about the book. I mean, it's, you read these military records once you get them, the after-action reports are very, very detailed, hour by hour, minute by minute records often. And you're reading about people who, and you realize that you're talking about these mostly 20-year-old kids. And, 15% of them are dead by the time this is over.
Wow.
And, you're reading what they did and how they fought and the actions they went through. And it's just remarkable to think how, here you are. The 101st went in. They didn't have any winter equipment. They basically didn't have any ammunition. The 28th Infantry was on the roads from Bastogne in retreat. These men were dazed. They were saying, Panzers everywhere. You're all going to get killed. There's millions of Germans up there. Don't go up there. And the guys at 101st said, well, that's why they're sending us in.
Wow.
To take care of it. And they said, are you using that M1? Well, we could use it. Give it to us. They had the guys pile up, retreating, their coats and their clothes and their weapons and their ammunition. And the 101st driving by took what they could. That's how they armed themselves going into battle.
Wow. Dr. Corsi, there's something about that generation's American spirit / faith.
No question about it.
You discovered it in your research. How do you explain it? I mean, it was an unbelievable.
Well, what you have with these people, with that generation, and I think with a lot of generations of Americans, and it's one of the reasons, General Boykin commented on the book. He endorsed it. And of course, he was fired from the military by President Obama for refusing to stop professing his faith openly in Jesus Christ. And you realize that, the military, our founding fathers said, and this also has intrigued me since I was a kid, you read various of the founding fathers saying, if America ever loses its Judeo-Christian tradition, you will lose your freedom. Now, I'm wondering, I always thought about that as a kid. So how could somebody like Jefferson, Jefferson's a very highly intelligent, gifted guy. I mean, he's doing mathematics, he's inventing things, he's producing furniture, he's building Monticello, he speaks French, he goes off to France, he's, meeting with the best philosophers, he's a sophisticated guy. And yet Jefferson is saying, go back and read the first sentences of things, the Declaration of Independence and our founding documents. And it's clear that they're saying that this is a nation founded on natural right, on the God principles, that this is how God created us. And Jefferson got it largely from Aristotle. People forget that Aristotle studied constitutions. And Aristotle's fundamental best regime was a constitutional republic of limited checks and balances, executive, legislative, and judicial. That's an Aristotle concept.
Wow.
Jefferson was impressed by Aristotle, as I was impressed by Aristotle, as a kid reading it. I gotta remember, I didn't go to school. I basically ran away from kindergarten. But I went to the library. And why would I go to kindergarten when I could sit there and read Jefferson?
Yeah.
What a waste of time it was too. So here, when I'm a kid, and just like I was a kid listening to my dad, and my dad was a tough guy. He was a labor negotiator. A machine gun blew up in my dad's face when he was in the Army Air Force, and his vision was bad. He had to always wear a patch or a lens over a dark lens on one of his eyes on his glasses. And he finally got an operation when he was just about ready to die, and he was cured. I went back to see him. He still had the patch on. I said, well, Dad, no, I don't mean to pry, but, I thought Mom said this operation was successful. He said it was. I said, well, then why do you have the patch on? If I can ask. He said, because I liked the patch. But he's a tough guy.
Wow.
It made him look bad. And, and yet, these guys who went through Bastogne, who went through the experience, were experiencing God in the experience, just like Jefferson did. So I'm thinking to myself, these are highly intelligent guys. They must be onto something. What's the key to unlocking that mystery? And I really began and have perceived all my life that they were right, because this is fundamentally an exercise in affirming faith, belief, and moral relativism fails because it produces what you see in our society today. And that is, this disintegration, this breakup, that all values hold, so any value is good. And, now we're going to worry about transvestites in the military.
Dr. Corsi, you not only weep for what you discovered in your research, but I sense in this topic also is what we have lost in America. And where is this faith? Why have we allowed seemingly one person to push it so far into the ditch? It's an amazing, I see where Klinkenschmidt lost his case before the federal judge, and of course it'll be appealed for praying in Jesus' name. I mean, we're kicking the very source of what keeps us together out. And from what you've said, it appears we have forgotten that the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States are divinely inspired documents.
Precisely. And that's the basis of saying America is an exceptional country. In other words, America is not just another country founded. There's, 197 countries today, and how many countries over the historical, junk heap of countries. But, the ones that have persisted, that have been historically significant, the United States was founded on natural law principles, thinking about God, thinking about how we function as human beings, being skeptical of power. The Roman Republic was the height of, people like Cicero and Cato. Go back and read them, which I've done, and they continue to fascinate me. Understood the same principles. And that is, if the Roman Empire moved away from a divine concept, even though the divine concept was, pre-Jesus Christ, and it was it was multiple gods, it was, polytheic, it was still founded in natural law. I mean, Aristotle, Plato were not Christian. There was no Christ to be Christian about. But yet, if you read Aristotle and Plato, you read the Gorgias of Plato, the discussion is, is justice something that's practical? It's not fair. Justice isn't fair. Plato has a discussion about, in the Gorgias, about, well, why don't we build boats with holes in the bottom? Says that's a good idea. We can see the fish. And then they say, well, the reason we don't build boats with holes in the bottom is because they don't float very well.
Yeah.
And the reason why we don't have dictators is they don't float very well.
Yeah.
So it's not just any government is equivalent to any other government.
Wow. Let me take a break here, Dr. Corsi. And again, the book is entitled No Greater Valor. By the way, you can go to nogreatervalor.com is the website. Look for it in bookstores, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and get a copy of it. It would make a wonderful Christmas gift. No Greater Valor by Dr. Jerome Corsi. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back, and our special guest today is Dr. Jerome Corsi, and of course, he's a New York Times best-selling author, and his latest book is entitled No Greater Valor, and it examines the seas of Bastogne, and let me tell you, this is quite a book, and I can tell that it has changed him personally by doing the research on this book. But there's much to glean from it, and I would hope that you would check it out. You can go to nogreatervalor.com or look for it online at Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Before I leave the book, Dr. Corsi, It's obvious it's impacted you greatly. What was your biggest surprise in researching this?
Oh, well, there were a lot of surprises. I think the really understanding the depth to which, those who fought at Bastogne had gone. I mean, there's moments in the battle. New Christmas Eve, the battle was fought over Christmas. They all go to services, and at the end of the services, approaching, after midnight, troops come back and they say goodbye to each other. Kind of a quiet descends on the battlefield, which the generals didn't really understand. And the men actually thought a lot of them would die the next day. And they heard the Germans singing Christmas carols in the woods, and they realized they were the same Christmas carols that we sing, but in German, like Silent Night, etc. And, that kind of a bond was, a moment in Bastogne was really kind of touching. And you wonder what it had to have been like to have been there, to have gone through that, and to realize, the values that transcended the two forces. And you have to wonder, the Nazis, our troops fighting there were aware of the massacre of Normandy. I mean, the SS had come through and under a guy named Piper and had massacred about 100 U.S. troops who had surrendered, POWs standing in a snowy field, and went through the field and stabbed with bayonets any who survived the machine gunning. And, we felt the Nazis were truly evil, and how they could yet, this was one of the fascinations of Hitler, how a Christian nation like Germany could descend into the barbarism that was represented by Hitler, the concentration camps, and all the other things the Nazis did. And the moral determination our men had to, restore values within, the world, and to destroy this evil force. And it's with perception that I wonder if we could have today.
Oh, boy. I'm just wondering, for various reasons, political correctness and other things, have we antiseptically scrubbed faith and morals from the military?
Well, see, I mean, this is the issue. And the issue to me is that, the Nazis went down this path. And by the time, Hitler, absolutely atheistic. I mean, he had no belief in, he was, if anything, he crossed over and was satanic. I mean, if you look at it from a Christian perspective. And the evil, he was perfectly happy to casually administer on the world, sipping tea at Bergdorf while sending Jews to the ovens in the concentration camps at Dachau. And, I've walked Auschwitz, twice. These are other experiences that fundamentally change you. And you see what happens when people lose religion. Well, why is it that we're having difficulty deciding that, it's evil when ISIS is beheading, crucifying people, and killing them by jamming crucifixes down their throats? And, killing whole villages, women and children. Do we really have to worry about whether this is evil, or is this just, choice A, B, C, D on the morally equivalent list to pick whichever flavor you want today?
All right, let's jump over into some current issues. It appears the president has no policy or plan to stop what you just mentioned. If anything, he seems to be throwing gas on the fire.
Well, if you recall, when I wrote The Abomination in 2008, I warned everyone that Barack Obama, who we really still fundamentally don't know who he is, his background documents have yet to be proven in any degree of detail. It looks like a CIA background to me, manufactured entity, manufactured personality. I said this was a person who was raised as a child in Indonesia by a Muslim stepfather who educated him as a Muslim and brought him to the mosque. And Barack Obama then, of course, denied all that. And then when he gets a chance, he was in Cairo in, I believe, June 2009. I was in Israel at that time. And Obama gets up in front of a auditorium and says, in Cairo, and says, I've experienced Islam on 3 continents. And I said, well, that's interesting. Why didn't you tell people that when you were running for president?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you've got someone who, if you look at what he does, forget about what he says, because I think after Gruber, even the most diehard Obama ideologue would have to admit that this is a guy who lies habitually.
Right.
Doesn't really care about the truth. Everything he says is calculated to get you to do something. And I've warned people about that. That's the Saul Alinsky basis. Again, another moral relativist manipulating people, which is what, once you've lost your values, you can easily get around to doing. So here you have someone who basically, what he's done is destabilize Northern Africa, killed Gaddafi by supporting Al-Qaeda in Libya.
Right.
When Gaddafi, Farrakhan, and Reverend Wright, when Obama was coming up remember, Obama attended the Million Man March for Farrakhan. And here's Obama associated with both Reverend Wright and Farrakhan getting money from Gaddafi. And then Obama abandons Gaddafi and kills him through Al-Qaeda. And we wonder why Chris Stevens is killed, probably either fostering or objecting to the arms traffic we're doing, like Fast and Furious, through Benghazi, with the arms going through Turkey into Syria.
Right.
So you have the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood, and here you have Egypt. The Muslim Brotherhood takes over. Muslim Brotherhood traces back to the Mufti of Jerusalem, who was a buddy of Hitler, and it's now a criminal organization in Egypt. Yasser Arafat was an Egyptian. He came up through the Muslim Brotherhood. He wasn't Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
And Obama, as soon as the Muslim Brotherhood takes over, puts all kinds of money into Egypt. And then the moment there's a military coup and the Muslim Brotherhood's under trial, Obama withdraws the money. So Russia moves in and starts supporting Egypt. And now you've got the situation in Al-Qaeda. Well, Obama has gone back and forth wanting to kill Assad or wanting to work with the moderate forces. Well, there are no moderate forces here. The people who are fighting Assad are a group of militant, mercenary Islamicists, killers that we funded going back to Libya.
Unbelievable. All right. Secretary Hagel's resignation. It appears that he reached an impasse. He couldn't manage the department. And it also appears that he may have woken up on the job and realized that this whole terrorist problem is bigger than Obama wants to really deal with. What's your take on him?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying I've never had a lot of respect for Hagel to begin with. I've always felt that Hagel probably engineered and stole his election when he won it. And that I've studied the voting in that case pretty detailedly. I think Hagel was appalled. I think even Hagel.
Yeah, that's the point.
Even Hagel.
Yeah.
Couldn't take what Obama was doing to the military and wouldn't preside over its destruction. And, Obama is, again, if you look at what he's doing, not what he says, the military, as I predicted when I wrote Abomination, we would end up with a much weakened military, because Obama's conviction from, if you read my book, I was the first one to say Obama's thinking comes from Frantz Fanon, and he's opposing colonialism. Dinesh D'Souza, who's a good friend, will openly admit that the theme of his first movie was something I first developed. Because I was reading Obama's writings from, Dreams from My Father. I said, wait a minute, this sounds exactly like Frantz Fanon. And whoever wrote it, Frantz Fanon was a radical Algerian who wrote books about why it was necessary for the psychological development of African Americans, or at this point Algerians, to go kill whites. He's a psychiatrist, and he was recommending kill whites therapeutically. Well, I thought when I was a kid, I read that in college. I thought, this Frantz Fanon character is about as weird a fruitcake as you're ever going to find. How can you go as a psychiatrist and recommend to people they kill in order? So this sounds like Charles Manson.
Wow.
Wow. And so here you got Obama parroting Frantz Fanon paragraph for paragraph, And I'm saying this is a guy who has got tremendous hatred of the United States as a colonial power and will do everything he can to reduce our military and reduce our significance in the world. And I predicted that when I wrote Abomination. And of course, everybody said I was a liar and a hate case and I didn't know what I was talking about. I think now, 6 years later, you go back and look at Abomination, you tell me where I was wrong.
Yeah. Dr. Corsi, thank you. I wish I had you for several hours, and I look forward to having you back often and soon. I want to say thank you for writing the book, No Greater Valor, and I want to say thank you for your transparency this morning. I'm moved by it deeply, and thank you for your tenacity to stay in there. So let's get together again soon. If we don't see you before Christmas, Merry Christmas to you and yours, okay?
And likewise, and to the audience, and I'll be happy to come back anytime you ask.
All right, blessings, my friend. All right.
Thank you.
We'll be right back.